It's so good to have y'all back for another episode of Digital EQ Reimagined. Diedrich here, your host and digital friend. Today, we journey deep into the trenches of the machine. But let's quickly recap what we discussed last week. In the last episode, we took a breath together. We talked about emotional reset tools, real science backed ways to reclaim your emotional sovereignty when digital overwhelm creeps in. We talked about doom scrolling, emotional hijacking, and the simple practices that bring you back to yourself. Um, but right after I recorded that episode, I broke my own rule. I stayed up past my digital curfew, not because I got sucked into a scroll hole, but because I had to talk to someone across the world, different time zone, same mission. He was helping with sound design for the podcast, hence the lack of sound design for my podcast. And somewhere between bass levels and fade outs, we started talking about emotional data. He said, "Come on, Diedrich. I mean, no one's really using emotional data the way you're describing it." And I paused. Not because he was wrong. He was, but because that's exactly the point. No one's writing a check labeled sadness. No one's handing over a receipt for rage. But if your emotions are being collected, and businesses are buying access to those feelings to sell you something or shape how you behave, then your emotions are part of a transaction. It's just one you weren't told you were part of. That conversation stayed with me, and it reminded me of something simple but dangerous. The machine works best when we don't notice it. So today, we're naming it. The systems, the incentives, the real emotional cost of staying connected in a world that's constantly trying to sell your feelings back to you. This is episode 7. Welcome to the machine. Let's start with where it's most visible, and yet still so invisible: social platforms. Because if businesses are refining emotional data, social platforms are the gold mines they're pulling it from. According to TikTok's privacy policy, they collect not just what you post or like, but how you type, your keystroke patterns, your scrolls, your pauses. Meta, same thing. They log your clicks, hovers, and location to personalize your experience. But let's say it plainly: these platforms are building your emotional profile, not in a diary sense, in a data sense. What gets you to stop? What makes you react? What makes you rage click or keep watching past midnight? That emotional profile is fed into a system that optimizes content for engagement, not for well being. And that profile is monetized, not sold as a file with your name on it, but accessed by advertisers who want to reach people in a specific emotional state. This is the machine. Not one big villain, but thousands of tiny nudges designed to keep you in a loop, to make you feel something, and then sell the feeling. One day, I opened Instagram. My feed was flooded with fitness models, luxury homes, and soft rise evergreens. Those perfectly curated, quiet wealth aesthetics. And it hit me. This wasn't just content. This was a mirror of my own insecurities. It wasn't showing me who I am. It was showing me who I thought I had to become to feel enough. Since when did that become my reality? That's what I mean when I say emotional profile. The machine isn't just showing you content, it's shaping your sense of self. Try this. Install a tracker that monitors your scroll time across apps. Not to shame yourself, but to spot your own emotional patterns. When do you scroll most? What's your mood afterward? Then start setting emotional bookmarks, not just time limits. Ask yourself, what did this platform give me emotionally, and what did it take? That's digital EQ in action. Awareness before automation. Okay, let's move into business, because this is where emotional data becomes strategy. Business is where emotional data gets its wings or claws, depending on how you look at it. We often think of businesses using data to understand what we buy, but now they're trying to predict why. Emotional targeting isn't just about suggesting a product, it's about timing that suggestion when you're most vulnerable to it. There are real examples, like that 2015 case where a major retailer used behavioral data to identify shoppers who were likely pregnant before they even told their families. Now imagine that on steroids. Emotional artificial intelligence scoring your tone in a customer service call, sentiment analysis scraping your emails, mood tracking sensors in retail stores, all to create a moment of emotional readiness for the sale. I get this sometimes on LinkedIn. I'll be scrolling and suddenly I'm hit with this wave of, should I be doing more? Am I sharing enough thought leadership? Should I be launching something else? It's not inspiration, it's performance anxiety disguised as progress. It's like the platform is whispering, here's what you're not doing, but we can show you how to fix that. That's how emotional targeting works. It doesn't just find your needs, it manufactures the void. Now, listen, I'm not just talking about this from the outside. I'm an entrepreneur. I know the power of data. I've run the analytics. I've seen how timing, targeting, and emotional cues can boost conversions. I get it. But there are lines I won't cross, even if it costs me, because your emotions are not a funnel. Your vulnerability is not a marketing opportunity. And your sadness should never be someone's KPI. I've built brands, I've run businesses, and I've made it a point to honor the privacy and dignity of the people I serve. But let's be real. Not every business is built that way. And not every founder is thinking about emotional ethics when they're chasing quarterly growth. That's why emotional sovereignty matters. EQ Power Move, Emotional Firewall. Next time you see a perfectly timed ad, don't just swipe it away. Pause, ask yourself, what was I feeling when I saw that? Install browser tools that block emotional profiling. Use incognito more often, not to hide, but to disrupt prediction. And practice digital mindfulness before checkout. Is this my emotion talking or their algorithm? Now let's move to something even more systemic. Government. Governments like to say they're here to protect you, but sometimes the tools they use to protect can quietly become tools to monitor, profile, and control. Across the world, governments are experimenting with emotion detection tech. Systems that claim to read facial expressions, voice tone, and even biometric signals to detect deception or a threat. In airports, in schools, in public housing. In the US, predictive policing algorithms have already been shown to disproportionately flag people based on historic bias. Now, imagine those same systems trying to read your mood, then labeling you as agitated, suspicious, or unstable. China's emotional surveillance in schools and workplaces is a real world example. And let's not forget AI used at borders, where emotional cues are used to assess threat levels, often without your knowledge or consent. This isn't the plot of a future dystopia. This is already happening. I believe in safety. I believe in protection. We all deserve to feel secure in our schools, our neighborhoods, our airports, our homes. But what happens when that sense of security comes with a silent trade off? When the cost of safety becomes your emotional privacy? You shouldn't have to give up your sovereignty to feel safe. You shouldn't have to mask your emotions to avoid being flagged, misunderstood, or labeled a threat by an algorithm. Real safety doesn't come from surveillance. It comes from trust, from consent, from boundaries, from transparency. Start by knowing what emotional surveillance tech is already legal or being proposed where you live. Read up on the EU AI Act, the US blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, and digital privacy coalitions. Use tools that block facial tracking on your devices. Don't default to always on microphones. And remember, just because you're in public doesn't mean your emotions are public property. Finally, let's talk about where the next generation is learning to feel: education. The classroom is supposed to be where emotional intelligence grows, but too often it's where emotional conformity is enforced. EdTech platforms are collecting more than quiz scores. Some use facial recognition to detect engagement. Others track typing patterns to detect frustration. And students, especially kids, are rarely told what's being collected or why. In some schools, Behavior management software flags students based on tone of voice, word choice in essays, or disciplinary history. But who sets the baseline for what's normal? Who defines what emotion looks like across cultures, neurodiversity, or trauma? And then there's the quiet erosion of empathy. When education becomes a race to the test, there's no time left for emotional vocabulary, for regulating feelings, for exploring the self. And without those skills, kids grow up digitally fluent but emotionally bankrupt. You're an educator, parent, or student. Make space for emotional literacy. Bring EQ into the curriculum, even if the system doesn't. Ask schools about the data they collect. Push for transparency in ed tech contracts. And most of all, listen to young people. Let them name their emotions without punishment. Let them question the system that tries to read them before they even speak. We just name the machine business, social platforms, government, education, not as villains, but as systems. Systems that feed on your attention, your behavior, and most invisibly, your emotions. These aren't isolated tools, they're connected. A scroll here, a search there, a test, an ad, a policy tweak. Together, they shape a world that reads your feelings and feeds on them. But here's the thing, you are not the sum of your scroll. You are not your engagement metric. You are not a product of prediction. And yes, this might feel overwhelming, like the machine is too big to name, too invisible to escape. But we don't reclaim our emotional sovereignty all at once. We do it in choices, in noticing, in pausing, in choosing which emotion belongs to us and which one was quietly placed there. You deserve platforms that see you without tracking you. You deserve education that honors your whole self. You deserve a world where your emotions don't have to be monetized to matter. So until the system changes, make space to feel. Protect your emotional boundaries and always remember, feed your emotions. Don't feed the algorithms. I can't walk you through the trenches and then just leave you there. So in next week's episode, we shift the focus. We explore the people, the companies, and the organizations that are doing the right thing with your data. In a world where our emotional data has become currency, there are still those who choose ethics over exploitation, sovereignty over surveillance. And they deserve to be named too. Until next time, I'm Diedrich. Stay digitally sovereign, stay digitally smart, and remember stronger emotions, not stronger algorithms. I'll see you in the next one.